Hi everyone, and welcome to Aston's Economics Department's Learning and Teaching podcast. I'm Karishma Patel, a teaching fellow in economics, and today we've got a really exciting episode planned. So it's really exciting because it's aimed towards students and actually second year students because it's all about placements. So our economics students have a compulsory placement year in their third year. And so today we want to talk all about placement experiences, getting application tips and all kinds of fun things. It's also really exciting because I'm not sure whether you can see, but you will be able to see if you're watching this in video form, that we're actually joined by a live panel today, which is the first time that this has happened. So it's very exciting. And we also have a live audience of second year students as well. So it's all very exciting, and we've got some great people lined up to talk to you. So I think I should introduce our panel. Starting with Andrew Hollings. So Andrew Hollings is a placement preparation manager as part of the careers and placements team. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. So I guess I could just talk for a minute or two about my role. I've been at Aston a couple of years. I was a student at Aston a long, long time ago. And as you said, I'm placement preparation manager. So my team is there to provide all the support that second year's students need to find a placement for their third year.
Fantastic. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for your time. And then we've also got second year student Alex Taylor, who's a BSc Economics student and also the chair of the Economic Society. And he's actually going to be leading the discussion today, which is very exciting. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Karishma. So, I'm essentially the one that Andrew's supporting. I'm in my second year. I'm having to balance looking for placements while doing my degree, which is quite good fun, but takes a lot of my time. But and I also run the Economic Society, as Karishma said. Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to all these discussions. And as Alex said, he's kind of in the situation of the second year student looking for a placement. So hopefully all the kind of questions and things that he has for our panelists are going to be very relevant to those of you listening at the moment. So later on, we'll also be joined by two guests online. They're actually currently on their placement. So we're very lucky that during their working day, we'll be calling them and asking them some fun questions and finding out about how they're getting on. So lots to look forward to. So as I said, Alex is going to be leading the discussions. We're going to start with thinking about, kind of at the beginning, thinking about placement, applications and support during that time as well. So over to you, Alex.
Yeah, so I think a lot of students will be familiar about actually finding placements. But something that I found very useful to me were application trackers that are used, but that you can find them online. A very common one is Bristol application tracker, and that just shows you when things have opened in previous years, if they're open now, and you can click on links. The other service that Aston actually supports themselves is Aston Futures, and I think most students are really aware of that and what they can use. They can get daily emails from it saying which positions have opened, which ones are closing, and that's something that's really useful. I think a lot of students will be getting to that sort of time where they're having first round interviews, second round interviews, just before assessment centres for roles. As we know, for a lot of placements, there's multiple stages to the process, and I think a lot of students are aware of that. It's just about how they can deal with that. I mean, there's a lot of support available at Aston, so 10% of one of my modules is completely placement-based, so it's building that cover letter, building your CV, and you have to prove that you've actually worked on that. And it goes further than that. It goes into the actual what you will face in the interview process. So things very early on, like situational judgment tests, I think I've had to prove that I've done a certain amount of them and also progress on them. And that's where you can see where Aston supports the students that I've experienced firsthand. I'm sure Andrew will tell me in a second that there's a lot more support to be had. And also being able to get your CV and cover letter checked by either the placements team or the careers team. I know you operate as kind of two separate teams. Yeah. But Andrew, is there any specific support that I've missed there or anything that you want students to know is out there?
Let me have a think. So I guess just to come back to your last point about the way the placements team interacts with the wider careers department. So the way we're set up at Aston is that careers consultants support students in their first and final year. And then my team supports second year students to find their placement. And we also have a on-placement support team who are there to look after students during their third year and whilst they're on placement. I think you've done a good summary of the support we offer. You mentioned the employability preparation portfolio. So every business school student will have that in one of their modules. It's worth 10% of a module. And as you say, it looks at kind of CVs, cover letters, situational judgment tests, and competency-based questions that you could come across at an interview, or you might come across them on an application form. I think more broadly, the message I would want second years to get is that we are here for the entirety of the year to offer all the support we can. So from kind of electronically via our inboxes, students can email questions, they can send us documents to check and we'll give feedback. You can book appointments via Aston Futures. We will have just run 4 workshops, again, for every second year student that were timetabled. Similarly, they were around an introduction to placements and then around CV and cover letter, like how to make applications and where to search, and around interview skills. Those will be available on Blackboard from week 5. Is that this week?
Yeah. Yes, it will be.
College going to get them online this week. So we'll have more workshops coming later in the year, but the main thing is to engage with us, like whichever of those methods you use, whether it's kind of remote via email or booking appointments, coming to workshops. It's just to engage consistently across the year. So we appoint a placement coordinator. A named member of staff is allocated every course. So every cohort of students will have a named allocated coordinator, and the earlier they can get to know individual students and understand like their preferences and what struggles they have in finding a placement and what interests them, the better service we can give. So we're always encouraging students to engage early. I know you were mentioning you started in June. There's always a cohort of students who are super keen and they're starting in the summer and they're like banging down our door as soon as term 1 starts. But there are also always some students who don't engage as much as we would like, and typically turn up kind of next summer going, I haven't quite done the work. So we would urge everyone to get in touch as soon as possible. We do make outgoing contact to people. So usually 3 times across the year, we'll proactively reach out to every student with a compulsory placement.
Is that who rang me?
Probably. Yeah, that'll be who rang you. So we do absolutely everything we can to make sure particularly compulsory students have to use our support.
I think it's quite consistent because even in my first year, I had a different employability module that was 10%. I know that was run by the careers team rather than placement, but I think it did lay the foundations of letting students know we're here. Yeah, this is quite serious. And I remember even straight after that, I had a quick lecture. I think it was a part of one of my different modules, and in that lecture we were spoken to by one of the careers consultants, and I remember them saying, "Oh, if you need something checking, just come and book it as is." And I was like, "Well, I don't need anything particularly checking yet, but I want to know what my options are if I can do this specific career that I want to go into, and if it's available to me." So I remember straight away booking a half an hour slot. It was really easy. I just book online. I showed up, and then it really helped me grow. And eventually, it let me know the options were there for me to do a summer internship, and hopefully that grows into a placement eventually. But I think the support is extremely consistent. It's as soon as you start at Aston, you know that the teams are there and you're able to speak to them and book in at any time you want. And I think it's important to break those boundaries between students, lecturers, and also the teams that are supportive. I think making sure that students know it's not the same as high school, it's not the same as sixth form. You must also try and see these people as colleagues, and they're here to help you out, and you have to take on that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think one of the biggest things is this support is out there, and the students need to go and get it and make good use of it. I actually remember, fun fact, when I was undergraduate, I used the careers and placements team myself as well to get my placement, and it's still going now, and even better obviously than it was back then. So I really encourage students to make sure they make good use of that. Thank you for that. So now I think we should talk to maybe our first student who's currently on placement. So we're going to be calling Jemima Maluta, who is a BSc Economics student, and she is at HSBC at the moment as a student credit risk analyst. And she's very kindly let us call her during her working day so that Alex can ask her lots of questions about how she's getting on with placement and maybe about her experience applying as well.
What do you enjoy most about that placement?
I think for me, I kind of like how I get to learn new things, like learning new skills. I'm assuming you do economics maybe?
Yeah, straight economics.
Or on that side, possibly. Yeah, so you probably will do econometrics and you'll be using R and things like that. We don't use the exact same thing, but you are still kind of coding. And I think learning a different coding language and kind of getting to grips with using something you like that and manipulating data, I find it quite interesting.
I think that draws back on that important point of Aston given the foundational skills you need to thrive in the workplace, even if it's in that applying part, also on the job, being able to have those coding skills that you might not necessarily be able to get elsewhere. How did you find the placement?
I guess for Karishma, she probably appreciate this. I did actually get my placement through Aston Futures. This is not paid promotion, but it was actually getting a really good resource to use. I would go on it quite a lot and filter, and you end up seeing roles that are quite good. And you might see a role that's perfect for you, and it just says, "Oh, your application to this person," and I guess it's just things like that. So definitely, I used Aston Futures, but I did also use things like Bright Network and a lot of those careers websites.
And what was the recruitment process? Did you have to go through multiple interviews? Did you go to an assessment centre, or was it a bit more laid back? You just had to do a virtual interview. What was the process behind that?
For this one, like I said, I saw the Aston Futures listing. I emailed my CV over, and then I had a virtual interview with members of the team here. And then it all just kind of went through like that. I think I got a bit lucky that way, that I kind of got that I didn't have to do, too much. But I did have to do those things when I was applying to other places.
Yeah, of course.
Things like that.
What time of year was it that you got received the offer?
I'm thinking it might be early, beginning-ish of this year, maybe.
Okay.
Few months in. But I had been applying from
straight off the bat,
from early in second year and things like that.
I bet it was quite a relief then when you got past Christmas and being able to get that job offer from HSBC for a year.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It definitely does take a weight off your shoulders a bit. So you don't go into exams and revising with that kind of extra weight of I want to get a placement by this deadline type thing. But I also don't think it's a thing where if you don't get one immediately that you should feel kind of dejected and oh, this is not going to happen for me, because I know quite a few people who got their placements later than you would expect, and they are still very good placements and they are enjoying it.
You mentioned using Aston Futures as part of the support that you used to help you find a placement. Was there any other support that you used on campus or virtually from Aston that you used to get your placement, or you can say helped you get your placement?
I think for me, again, this is another, African careers team promotion, but I genuinely really appreciated the drop-in sessions that they held from second year. I've told my friends who are in second year now, please take advantage. There are people there who's a big part of their job role is to help you find a job. So if you need CV help, if you need cover letter help, just go to them and ask. They will be happy to help you. The amount of times that me and my friends would go in there in second year, can you look at the CV, please? For things like this role, should I change these things? So honestly, things like that, even in just general interview advice, if you go in there with like a goal and you have like your replacement set out when you've got a draft CV or something, they will help you. So don't feel like shy, or just take advantage of the resources that are there, because you are at uni. You should take advantage of things that are offered to you to help you out.
It's great that you said that, because we've actually got Andrew here from the placements team. So,
like, as you say, it's good not being paid to advertise for us, but it's nice to hear that you valued the support that the team are able to give you. That's really nice to hear. You were saying about people securing perfectly good placements late in the year. Before you came on the call, I was talking about how we really urge students to kind of engage with us early and work consistently across the year. Hopefully when people are watching this back, it will be still this side of Christmas. But statistically, it is the case that a large proportion of students are placed kind of after May. So, yeah, just to echo what you said, for those who might be looking at this a bit later or coming to use our services a bit later, it is the fact that you have less choice the later in the year it gets, but there are still plenty of very good quality placements around, even through the summer. So people should not be downhearted. And I know there are some students who just don't put the work in early and they turn up in May with a can you help me? But I also know there's lots of students who work really hard from early in the year, and it just takes a long time. Like, can be a bit of a numbers game, and it can be a long time before the right thing drops for people. So just
again, though, I definitely got my fair share of rejections. I guess it's just part of the process. You kind of let it roll off your back and you keep going. It's like a momentum thing. You just have to keep doing them, keep like getting those CVs out, and eventually you'd hope that it turns out well, which it normally does if you put the work in, I think.
Yeah, and I think obviously the experience students have on their placement year is hugely important, but I also see a massive value in that second year experience of like having to make applications and deal with rejections and be persistent, and just learning the skills that it takes to weave your way through application and then assessment. I think that is a really big part of what makes Aston graduates really capable in navigating the labour market when they get to be looking for graduate roles. So I know it can be tough, and as you were saying about balancing that with your studies as well, and exams come in and all of that, but I do think it's a great learning experience for students as well.
Jemima, has there been any big adjustments you've had to make, or any big challenges you've faced for this role, or has it been pretty plain sailing since you got there?
I think just like in a general sense anyway, because I had like a brief internship before I started here. I guess just generally when you're like entering a workplace, you kind of have to get used to the fact that you just don't know everything. So you have to also kind of make that mental adjustment, being like, it is okay to ask questions. It's okay to like ask for clarification when you're not sure of things. Especially like working here, you might see a bunch of like acronyms of things that you have no idea what they mean, and you just kind of have to make that adjustment in your head, being like, they know I don't know anything. There's no point in me pretending that I do know everything. So just ask the questions, like get the knowledge, because you'll be more helpful to everyone else if you just ask for an explanation rather than like kind of trying to muddle your way through on your own.
How many applications do you think that you put through before you managed to get that offer? Because I've heard from a lot of people that it's like double figures, the amount of applications that they have to put in to actually get an offer back. How many do you think that you put through before you got that great offer from HSBC?
I'm trying to think. It's been a while now.
That's okay.
Motion tracker that is some buried somewhere, but probably 10 upwards, probably more than that. I think it is quite a light numbers game, which is why they recommend that you start early and you start getting them in and get used to that whole process of clearing your CV and all that stuff. Just the more time you give yourself, I guess, the more time you have to get them in.
what is your final piece of advice that you would give to a second year student that's looking for a placement right now?
Find something that you enjoy at uni and then use that to build up of, when you're talking about your skills, there are a lot of things that people don't think they can leverage into real tangible skills you can use at workplace. You can, so I say do that. Also just work hard, time management, give yourself as much time as possible. Everyone always thinks they have a lot of time to do something until they don't.
Thank you so much, Jemima, for joining us. It's so good to see how you're getting on with your placement, and I hope the rest of it goes well, and we'll see you in the final year.
Thank you, Trish. Sure. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was so fantastic to hear from Jemima. So I taught Jemima in her first year, the statistics for economics course, which I also taught Alex in his first year. So it's nice. It's really nice as a lecturer to kind of just see how the students progress, especially if you see them in the first year and then you see them in the final year when they come back from their placement. It's just so nice to hear about their different experiences and things. So obviously Jemima talked about her placement, which was at HSBC, which I guess is, something which we can see very closely relates to the economics kind of course and things that we cover. I'm also interested to know what kind of other placements economics students at Aston generally go on.
Yeah, so I think probably the first thing to say on this is to put people's mind at ease. People may be aware of this, but they may not. From the university's point of view, it is not essential that your placement aligns totally or at all to your degree. So some people will obviously use their placement to get exposure to the industry they're interested in and something that's closely aligned to their degree. But others, by the time they reach us, have already gone, yeah, I'm doing this degree, but maybe it's not for me. Let me go and try something totally different, which is perfectly valid. I think in terms of how your placement experience translates ready for graduate applications, obviously there are some experiences which will stand you in good stead for certain industries, but generally speaking, I think they say about 80% of grad roles do not specify a degree, and hence it reads across that graduate employers are most interested in kind of the skills that students can bring. They know that they're probably going to have to train you up in their specific ways of working and the systems they use and everything else. So they're most interested in transferable skills, which you can develop in different industries or different areas. I've had a quick look back over economic students and where they've been placed just in the last couple of years. And it's about 25% are going to financial services as a sector. And then if you look down, there's a list of probably 15 other kind of sectors, and there could be all over there, from construction, government, consultancy. You've got even retail and hospitality. And when you dig down into those sectors, it looks like around about 50% of the roles listed are very kind of finance-ish. Yeah. So even when someone's sector says construction, when you look at the job titles, they're often still feel quite kind of closely related to economics. So yeah, similar to other courses at Aston, there's a lot of variety, and I think that's a good thing. Was just talking to Alex about location-wise, about 40% of economics students are staying in the Midlands, about 30% going to London. So 40% West Midlands, 30% London, 10% other Midlands. So, don't know where that is. Nottingham, I suppose, East Midlands. And then, as with all courses, some students will go abroad. So two options really for students to go abroad. Study abroad, where we've got about 80 university partners in all different countries, where essentially they've agreed, we will take up to 5 Aston students, or we'll take up to 3 Aston students, and the places are kind of there, ready for students to take. That can be a brilliant option, and I know my colleague Halima, who runs that process, can show you statistics that show how having experience abroad can kind of increase your employability when you go into grad roles. I think all the kind of life admin and the visas and the organisation and the independence that it takes to go abroad, whatever you do abroad, is impressive to employers. But it is also possible for students to work abroad. So from our point of view at the university, when we approve placements, it basically makes no difference if you're in the UK or abroad. There's 3 bits of paperwork students have to provide and get signed by the employer. If you're abroad, there's just one extra one, which is a travel risk assessment, which goes to the University Health and Safety Department and just checks the place you're going is safe. So that can be a really interesting option for people as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for that. That's super interesting. And obviously, I think a key point there is there's so many different options for our students in terms of the placement. I think it's quite, sometimes students can think, okay, I just need to go on like a work placement and it's got to be, I don't know, like at this typical kind of a company. But actually, there are so many different kind of combinations of things that the students can do. And there's definitely potentially value in a lot of the other options as well.
Absolutely. And just having a look over those kind of, lists that line by line, student by student lists of where everyone's been over the last few years, it's notable that there's a lot of job titles or role titles on there that I'm looking at them and I just don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you if that's really closely like related to economics or more finance, but less economics, or just totally different. And I think that kind of translates into when students are searching for roles. Like, there are so many roles that are just called industrial placement. And it's not until you click through that you actually find out what's going on. So yeah, I think it's important really for students to be quite flexible and just really have that like curiosity when they're searching. There'll be roles that you've never heard of that could be perfect for you, or jobs you don't know exist, or things that are just kind of slightly strangely advertised or poorly categorized. So it's just about really being curious and looking at everything.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So on that note of, varieties of placements and things like that, I think we should call our next guest on the podcast. So this is Ngoza Chama, who is a BSc International Business and Economics student, and she's on a really cool placement. Drum roll, she's at the Walt Disney Company. Oh. Yeah, that's super exciting, and I'm also kind of jealous, but I'm really excited to talk to her and find out all about her placement. So let's give her a call.
Hi. So tell us a bit about this Walt Disney placement.
So I'm a brand commercialization intern for Disney Baby, Preschool, Nat Geo, Mickey and Friends. And basically, I'm just managing like the strategy of the franchise and like anything that we're going to do for the future, and just ensuring that like we can expand and grow as quickly as possible.
What's like the day-to-day role of that? Like when you get into the office or where you're working, what is the day-to-day role of that?
So we usually get in for like 9 a.m. and then straight away we'll usually have a one-to-one with my line manager where we just discuss any of the tasks for the day. And then at the moment, for example, we're working on some like expansionary decks for like Stitch and Mickey and Friends. So I'll be usually using Excel to like just get any growth data from previous years to then be able to translate onto PowerPoint and just talk about it.
Yeah, look at that, using Excel like in the first year statistics for economics module. Nice.
Yeah, it all genuinely builds up. Like, I even used it across summer and an internship, and like the skills that you get given in your first year are really fundamental for whatever you end up doing. Have you got to do any interesting events, Ngoza, as part of Disney?
Yeah, so I think maybe a couple of weeks into my internship, we had this event called the BCU, where we basically just showed like all our licensees anything that's coming up. So they got to see first looks of the new films that are coming out, such as Stitch live action and Moana. And they just got to see like all the products that we've made and anything that we're working on. And then last week we had a party called the House of Mouse party, where we had Anderson .Paak and a lot of like Love Island influencers and a lot of TikTok influencers that were there as well.
Anderson .Paak is a crazy guest to have.
Yeah.
Wow. The way you just drop that in there as if it is nothing as well. You clearly get to do an exciting role. How did you hear about the Walt Disney placement?
So it was really random. Like I just applied for Amazon, and then I think the next day I was scrolling on TikTok, and there's like a Disney advert just came out. So I was just like, might as well just see if I could apply. And at the time they had the internships open, so I just applied, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Have you used any of the Aston support while on placement? Like, what are you having to do while you're on your placement for Aston at the moment? Because I've heard that there's some style of assessment while you're still on placement. What are you having to do for that?
So we've been told that we're going to have to write, I think, an essay just talking about everything we've done through our placement, and we have like a placement coordinator as well. I haven't met them yet. I was told that I'd be in contact either end of October or early November, so hopefully that'll be soon. Yeah.
And then how much time do you think that will take, or are you not too sure yet? I don't know if it's too early in your placement.
I'm not too sure yet.
Okay, that's completely.
She's still enjoying the placement and all the fun, but of course the assessment will be to come, and you'll meet your placement tutor and stuff, and we can talk about that in a bit as well. But your placement sounds so exciting.
Thank you. It is. I think the best thing is like the office, for example, like each meeting room is different. So we have like a Mickey room with just like Christmas Mickey. We have a London room of like a massive like Lego version of a Big Ben, and we have like a bunch of little Mickeys as well there as well. So it's really cool.
Where are you based? Whereabouts?
Hammersmith.
Hammersmith. Okay. So have you had to move and get accommodation near there, or are you commuting?
I'm commuting from Peterborough.
Okay, so it's not too far for you then.
No,
not at all. Okay. Well, it sounds absolutely amazing, to be honest. Sounds like quite a dream placement.
Yeah.
How long is it lasting for? Is it a full 12 months placement, or is it? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's 12 months.
So I finish next year, June.
Okay. And then you'll be back at Aston.
Yeah.
Don't seem too disappointed. Final year will be great too. But so I'm interested, like, is there anything like fun coming up for you that you know about in your placement, or anything that you're kind of looking forward to?
So we have a lot of like new meetings coming up. So like we have this thing called Nuremberg, where it's like a big toy fair in Germany that myself and other interns are working on, like creating a pitch deck for my team, and then my team get to present that pitch deck to a lot of the licensees and also show like the other companies what we've been doing. So that's quite exciting. And like we have a lot of anniversary parties coming up that we're planning, and like just making sure that we can have, I guess, a lot of fun and connect with Gen Z at the moment.
Nice. Yeah. And I heard you mention like other interns, or are there quite a few other interns in a similar position to you there then?
Yeah, we even have, I think there's 4 Aston interns working at Disney at the moment. So yeah, it's quite nice also seeing like familiar faces.
Yeah, that's really nice. So I think that's really important as well. A lot of companies do have, it may not necessarily be like all from Aston, but also from different universities as well who are on placement. Yeah. So you get to know different people too, which I suppose must be really nice. Great.
Could I just ask, I might have missed this actually in the introduction, because that would be typically off me. But what's your role title? And I was just interested to hear a bit about like how much you feel it relates closely to your degree subject, or not at all, or like where there might be crossover.
So I'm a brand commercialization intern. So I'm working with like the strategy and the marketing of the franchises that I'm in charge of. I would say it's pretty similar in terms of my degree. It's, I think, more focused on the business side of everything in terms of like strategy and like marketing techniques and just like expansionary policies for those franchises. But from what I've learned, the most useful thing that I've taken from my degree would be Excel and PowerPoint. I think that's the most important thing you will need for brand commercialization in particular.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Great. And then I guess final question from me is about what would you say is so you've talked about something that you've kind of taken away from Aston and it's useful for your placement. So far, is there anything in particular that you could say like, wow, this has been a big learning curve for me, or something that I've learned from my placement so far?
I think definitely patience. We have this like app called the Audience Tracker where we have to like go through and find insights for certain things. And it takes about 10-20 minutes to load. So like it's hard to just like do a task unless Audience Tracker's working. So I think I've had to just learn to be very patient with that like app in particular.
Great. Interesting stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. We will let you get back to your very exciting placement and look forward to seeing you when you return back to Aston.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh, that was so interesting. I really want to go on that placement now. Yeah. Great. So we've talked to students who are doing a variety of placements, and now I think we should maybe talk a little bit about the kind of support that will be offered during the placement and stuff. I assume on second year's minds, this might be something.
Yeah, for sure. But certainly it's not just about getting that placement. It's thinking, how am I going to cope in the workplace, and how am I going to adapt to challenges that face me? Will I be well prepared for them? Also thinking about what do I actually need to do for Aston while I'm on placement, because we've heard, like, not rumours, but like we've heard down the line, like, you do have to do something. So Andrew, if you'd like to tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to cover would be the support that's available to students. So essentially within the placements team, we have a sub-team called the on-placement support team. We give them the catchy name. And their job is as it sounds. They're there to support you. The first thing they do is approve all placements. So all placements have to be approved by the university. I mentioned earlier 3 bits of paperwork. I'll do it briefly because it's not super exciting, but I guess important. Students always have to provide a job description, which is to show that the tasks they're going to be working on are useful. And kind of, they don't always have to be at like a graduate level or at a high level, but we like to know what students are up to. They'll provide a placement agreement form, which is kind of signed by the student and the employer, and it's all the basics, like here's my dates, here's the company name, here's a contact. So we have a named contact at every placement provider. And then a health and safety form, which is basically the employer ticking to say, like, it's a safe place, they've got insurance and all that stuff. So I guess that's like the first level of making sure all placements are like appropriate, safe for students and that kind of stuff. That team is then there to support students right across the year. They will typically do some proactive reach out to students. Around this time of year, actually, before Christmas, they try and do like one round of calls out to students, basically just to, how's it going? Did you start? Are you okay? But mostly they're there on a reach-in basis for students to get in touch with any support that they need. So yeah, they've got a phone number, they've got an inbox, which is on placement support at aston.ac.uk. And you can just get in touch with them anytime, and they'll help you with literally anything from like, is my pay right? I might have been taxed a bit wrong and I'm not sure how this works, to, more serious things where students are maybe a bit overwhelmed starting their placement, or they've got a particular like interpersonal dynamic they're struggling with, anything like that. And so the first thing for a student to do is get in touch with them. They'll arrange a meeting, they'll spend some time with the student, and we want to kind of tailor the support that we offer based on the student's needs without kind of disempowering students. So sometimes it is just a conversation about, like, here are some ways you might go about dealing with this problem yourself. We can kind of strategize a bit and support the student to make decisions, or make a plan for themselves about how they're going to deal with the challenges they're facing. On other occasions, we will actually get involved and we can speak to employers on the student's behalf. We're happy to do that, but that will always be with the student's agreement. The last thing they will do sometimes is support students to change placement. So most people, like the students we spoke to today, they start a placement, it's meant to last a year, and they do their year and everything's good. And even if they have some challenges, they'll still remain in one placement. But it is possible, and students should be aware of this, to change placements throughout the year. And sometimes that's because something's not going as they'd hoped. Sometimes students will start a placement that's just not the perfect placement they're looking for, and later in the year they're offered something that they feel is better suited to them, that's going to develop their skills better, and so they're there to do that as well. We're there the whole year again to support.
Once students have an offer, would you suggest that they continue applying for placements and getting more offers in, or would you say that they can kind of relax a little bit? Because I know a few people that they're starting to get towards that assessment centre stage. I think, great, if I've got this one, do I just leave the rest of them cold? Or do you carry on and kind of keep them in the bank in case you get an offer rescinded?
I think that's very much students' choice. There is probably a bit of an official line from Aston, which is if you've accepted a placement, you should be going on that placement.
Okay.
We don't want Aston students representing the organisation letting employers down.
Yeah.
However, I think it's not that simple. I understand that, when I'm out there in the labour market looking for a job, you have to make 20 applications, and it can just be that none land and then 3 land. And I think we have to be realistic with students about how that might look for them. I would say if you've got a placement that you feel is 70, 80 or 90% what you're looking for, just put it to the side and say that'll do me great and carry on with your studies. But sometimes, students might apply for placements they feel a bit unsure about, maybe just to get the experience of applying or the experience of interview, and then they get offered it and they're kind of And so whilst we could say to them, or, if you've been offered, that's you done, students are going to go and try and get what's best for them. So what we will always strive for is to support the student if they're going to, for example, have an offer and then change their mind, that they're doing that professionally and they're taking the right steps to inform the employer and do it politely and explain their reasons and stuff. And I think that's reasonable.
Let's say a student gets onto a placement, they're really happy with it, and they continue on a placement with the hope of getting a return offer, as quite a few students will be looking for. Even if they don't get that return offer, what is the benefits of doing a placement to that student?
Yeah, so I think, it is a benefit that we sell to students. We'll say, lots of students end up going back for their grad role, and that is definitely the case. My take on it is employers, I'm sure they think they get a lot of good value out of placement students, but they're not doing it because they're these placement students are going to bring loads to our business. They're doing it because they want to get talent early, right? They have a placement scheme because they want to go, let's bag some of the best students we can possibly find, get them early, and then we'll wrap them up into our grad scheme. So I think that happens a lot. Where it doesn't happen, it's just that really, really key, whether it's industry specific or just more generalized work experience. I think the grad market is sufficiently competitive now that all work experience is important, but there is a significant difference between a good quality industrial placement, doing professional work, as opposed to, your part-time job where you might be doing something more entry level. So for me, it's being able to demonstrate the skills that you've used. And the reality of that is, when you get to interview and they say, tell me about a time when you used your excellent communication skills, we can all talk about maybe the project we did in the second year when we had to work in a team. But really, if you can talk about a work-based professional setting, it's about bringing them brilliant examples to your application forms and your interviews once you're in the grad market, I would say.
I think that's something that set Aston apart for me when I originally applied to the university, was the industrial placement. The fact that the uni makes it compulsory. As far as I'm aware, for the business school, you can't even finish your third year. You have to do a placement. And looking at, you said the grad market is sufficient. It is so overly competitive. There are just too many graduates for the spaces available in the market, unfortunately. So I think it's great. And as I said, it's something that brought me to Aston, was the fact that, okay, if I can't differentiate myself elsewhere, everyone's got the same degree on a piece of paper, BSc Economics, no matter where it's at, study loosely the same content. Oh, okay, they've worked here for a year. Okay, even if they don't understand specifically the role that this company's wanting them to do, they're familiar with a corporate environment. They're familiar that people aren't going to get babied and like that. There's that element of when your boss is speaking to you, it's slightly different when they're paying you. And I think that corporate environment is something that employers look for, okay, they've settled into that before, they'll be okay here. They've done a whole year. An entire year is a lot different from a summer internship as well. Like, I think for my summer, I spent 8 weeks somewhere. If you think about the difference in time scale that you settle in for 8 weeks compared to a year, it's something that will just set you miles apart. So,
and it's the difference in the kind of duties and activities that they can get you involved in when they've got 12 months to work.
Exactly.
They can invest weeks and months in building your knowledge and building your skills in a certain area that you can then pay back to them over 8 months. But I think the other really important thing, I guess the way I describe that is like, you get that experience so you can sell it to a grad employer, right? You go to interview and you can talk about it, but the reality is it's also that students come back and they believe it, right? They actually think, like, I deserve this great grad job and I've got the confidence and I've got the skills to do it.
Yeah, it's the transferable skills as well, right? Even if, like you said, that the placement isn't in, I mean, you might do the placement, you might really enjoy it and say that that's the industry you want to go back to. Equally, you might do the placement for a year and take a lot away from it, but maybe you also realize this isn't the industry that I want to be in. But you've acquired all these transferable skills that are going to come in handy anyway. Even, you know, those simple things that you don't think about and maybe take for granted, like just time management, right? Being able to like work to a proper schedule, because university is fairly flexible as a student compared to how it's going to be in the workplace. So I think things like this is really important as well.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, lastly, the really important for your grad world when you want your grad job and everything else, but also I think the way a student can perform on final year having completed a placement is very different to the way a student performs in final year if they haven't done a placement. Like, I see final year students come back after their placement just like totally on it. I know how to do this now. Like, I could, if I just work 9 till 5, I'm going to smash this out of the park. Like, this will be easy. And I think that's really important. Part of it is that they just, and I see that energy in final year students as well, that they're just like, just want to get this done now and get out there into the world of work. Like, they've had that experience of work and most times they've loved it. And then they're like, come on, it's only 7 months to get through my final year and I'll be back at work, getting my money in and, living the professional life. So I think it really helps to motivate students as well through the final year.
Absolutely. I see it with my final years. Like I mentioned earlier, that there's a significant change. Like I said earlier, I think I was telling you, they show up early to the lecture even before I do. Like, it's even those habits that they've kind of built, which is just so different to pre-placement. So,
building on what Karishma said, sometimes I genuinely think it is more useful finding out what you don't want to do rather than what you do want to. Like, obviously, everyone wants to find out what they do want to do, but it's really undervalued finding out what you really don't want to do. And I mean, this isn't even related to placements, but I took a year out and I worked as a barista for a year and also applied to the army as an officer. And I enjoyed the army part, but the barista part, I thought, right, I do not want to be doing this. Like, full time, I want to go get my degree, and that's something that really motivated me in my first year. So I can imagine someone going on placement and realising, okay, maybe this isn't what I want to do. It might be used as motivation for them to either study harder or find something elsewhere. They might be looking at options elsewhere.
I think one of the things I've been speaking to students about recently is that they often do feel that they're worrying about what placement they're going to do because they think it will really directly inform their next, like, what career they're going to have. And it's just trying to kind of ease students into that thing about, like, the way careers develop. Even after you graduate, people basically spend the first 5 to 10 years going, let me try this, and maybe it's a bit tangential and try something a bit different, or like, that's just how careers go. And I think if students have a sense of that, it might just help them to relax a bit about the placement. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. Like, it's some experience and it will inform your decisions and it'll give you some good experience, but it's not going to draw a straight line to what happens for the rest of your life kind of thing. So,
for sure. Great. This has been super interesting. And I know we said that we'd talk a little bit about the placement assessment. So I'll very quickly touch on it before we wrap up. So in terms of support, you also get assigned a placement tutor. And so, for example, I might be a placement tutor for various students. And what will basically happen is you get to meet that placement tutor every so often. basically just check in, see how you're doing. A lot of it is just making sure like you're okay and you're enjoying the placement and this sort of thing. And then towards kind of, I'd say like the second half, the latter half of your placement, we start to think about the placement assessment. You'd obviously get more details about this when it comes to that point, but in general, you'll be doing two parts. So one will be a reflective portfolio. You're basically reflecting on your experience on placement, linking it back to things which you've learned at Aston and things which you're going to go on to do at Aston and in the future, and kind of linking to key competencies. So it's a really good kind of exercise in that sense. And then you also do a placement presentation where you're presenting on like a key issue or process in your current workplace as well. So that's just a very brief summary, but we can certainly talk about this in more detail, maybe in a future episode if it's something which is of interest. But thank you so much to our audience for joining us. This has been super exciting, and thank you very much to our panelists as well. This has been great, and I hope our second year students find this useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.